everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Alicia and I'm a sous chef with a sweet tooth. If you enjoy this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button down there. Today we are making a decadent gelato recipe, keto chocolate cinnamon Heath Gelato. So let's get started. Now this is actually an old recipe that I found in one of my books from an old pastry job I had. And it's actually the same place that had that chocolate cinnamon chili creme brulee that I made another video. I'm gonna link that above. It is actually one of 3 components that were on a pastry dish. We sold dishes that were upwards of $50 a piece, but they were a bunch of different little desserts on one plate. It was more for sharing and stuff like that. And it was really easy to make the gelato keto. Making the Heath, on the other hand, was not that easy. And I did mention that in my creme brulee video that it would probably be difficult to make. And I did a couple different recipes, but I'll show you the technique. And you can also add whatever kind of add-ins you want to this base. This base is delicious just on its own, and I was thinking doing the Lily's sea salt caramel milk chocolate bar. That would be really good chopped up in this. If you don't want to go through the hassle of making Heath, I just wanted to make the exact recipe like I had it back at the pastry shop. The recipe had cornstarch in it, so I replaced that with arrowroot powder. It is a couple of grams of carbs, but in the whole batch, it doesn't add up to too much. But I'm sure if you don't have that, it will turn out fine. The procedure on this is a little bit different than my other ice cream recipes. And I looked up the difference between gelato and ice cream, and there's less cream in it, and it's served at a warmer temperature. That's why when you buy gelato at the store, it always says to leave it out for 10 minutes before you eat it. But mine stays scoopable even after a day in the refrigerator because we got gelatin, and we're using allulose. We're gonna heat our cashew milk on the stove. I'll take you over there. We are gonna be tempering the eggs just like we do in all the other recipes, but we are taking it back to the stove and stirring it until it thickens. So with the 2 egg yolks, I have my allulose, I have some cinnamon, I have a little bit of salt, and I have my arrowroot powder. I'm gonna pour that right into the egg yolks, and I'm gonna whip that up until the egg yolks are nice and pale. That's all there is to that. We're gonna set that aside for now. And I bloomed a teaspoon of gelatin in a little bit of the cashew milk. Our cashew milk has come to a simmer. So we're gonna do the same thing as we did with all the other ice cream recipes. You're just gonna temper your eggs. Now the difference here, after you add this back into the rest of your milk, you're going back to the stove and you are gonna cook this until it thickens over low heat. Okay, we are back to the stove. I'm going to turn it to medium-low heat, and I'm going to continuously stir this until it thickens. This is how most ice creams are made. I just don't worry about the raw egg in my ice cream, but this is how you would make a normal ice cream. You could also just take an instant read thermometer, and once it gets to 160, you're pretty much set.
Cook, baby, cook.
So you can see it's starting to get thicker. This usually takes 10 to 15 minutes on medium-low heat, which is why I usually skip it because I'm very impatient. But don't try to up the heat because you will scramble your egg. You'll still have fine custard. Just strain it and churn it anyways. It'll still taste good. Ultimately, you don't want to do that. Give this a little thermometer check. It's probably up to 160. Oh yeah, it is. Now you do not want this to boil. I'm going to be pulling this off. And then we got the cinnamon. Now it's time for the chocolates. Okay, so I have 5 ounces of Lily's semi-sweet chocolate chips. And I have a strainer. I'm going to strain my mixture over those chocolate chips and let it sit for a few seconds. And whisk in my chocolate. And now because I'm using the semi-sweet chocolate chips, which aren't really sweet enough for me, I tasted it after I mixed everything together, and I wanted it a little bit sweeter. So I added a half a teaspoon of stevia drops. This is totally up to you. I would try it after you mix in the chocolate if it's sweet enough for you. Don't add in the extra stevia. I'm going to give this a whisk. Now this was just the cashew milk. We are going to add a half cup of chilled cream to this mixture once it has chilled completely. I'm going to cover this straight down on the custard with plastic wrap and chill it 8 hours to overnight. I'll probably be back tomorrow to churn this. This keeps it from developing a skin on top, and then you won't waste any of your mixture from having to skim the top layer off. Okay, I'm gonna pop my mixture in the fridge, and then we are gonna get on to making the Heath Bar. Now it's time to make the Heath part of our chocolate cinnamon Heath Gelato, and it is not the easiest thing to do. I have done lots of research. I've asked a keto friend of mine, but I'm trying another one. I followed a recipe. It crystallized, didn't harden. I've tried it with xanthan gum. It crystallized, but it does harden, and that's what I used for mine, and it tasted good in the ice cream. So this is another crack at this, and hopefully it will turn out. If you're seeing this, it did. So spoiler alert. But I have a half a stick of butter in my pot, and then I was told that using powdered sugar would keep it from crystallizing, and I'm cooking it to hard crack stage, which they all say, and it's 300 degrees, so I'm going to be keeping a close eye. Even if it doesn't look like English toffee at 300, I'm going to pull it. So we're going to try this again, and hopefully it will turn out. We are going to be going over to the stove. Now they all say low heat, so I'm going to start on low heat. The butter was not soft, so this is going to take a while to melt. But I'm going to stir until it is melted. Now you really should have a candy thermometer. My candy thermometer broke last time I was making candy, so I just have a regular meat thermometer, which I'm going to use. We are only making a small amount, so if you don't have a small pan or something that you want to use that's the size that you want, great tip is just to use tin foil. You can mold it into whatever shape you need, and I sprayed it with a little bit of avocado oil. Even when you're making, if you need something with sturdier sides, I just fold pieces of cardboard. I do it like a little bit taller, and I'll fold pieces of cardboard in the sides to make it like a sturdy tray. Hopefully this won't crystallize once it's cooked up to 300 degrees. Keto sugar work is not easy. Okay, it's coming to a boil. Now one recipe says to stir it every 30 seconds, one recipe says to leave it alone. In school we always were taught to leave sugar alone. You don't even stir it at all after the sugar's dissolved. You can see the crystals forming on top. I don't know if you can see it on camera or not. Stop crystallizing. Like I said, I'd be happy if it crystallized as long as it doesn't separate. The last couple separated the butter from the toffee. I'm gonna pull this right off at 300, so I'm at 244 right now. I also have a little bit of vanilla standing by that I'm gonna put in this. The sugar will boil over. I found that out the hard way once. Big mess. I don't really think I need to stir it in. I'm just gonna wait until I have to add in the vanilla. The problem with not stirring is it goes up and down the temperature depending on where you're at in the mixture. Starting to get brown. That's promising. Okay, my thermometer is saying 300. So, turning this off, adding the vanilla, it will splatter on you. Be careful. It says to continue stirring constantly in one of the blogs. And I'm going to pour it onto the tin foil. It's promising. It may crystallize, but at least I don't think the butter separated. So we're going to wait for this to harden a little bit, and I have some Lily's chocolate chips hanging out that I'm going to be putting on here once it's hardened but still hot. They'll melt and you can spread them out. So this is our toffee. It took about 10 minutes to get kind of solid. It did crystallize, but like I said, it's going to taste delicious in your ice cream anyways. At least the butter didn't separate out. Like the other ones, they didn't even harden all the way. Like this is hard. At least there's no butter on top that's, you know, liquidy. So you don't want that. This will still taste good. So we're going to sprinkle over our chocolate chips. It is still warm. And lid this. And let it sit for like 5 minutes until the chocolate melts. Once it starts to melt, you want to spread it out. You can also just put this in the microwave, the chocolate chips in a bowl, and then spread it over, which would probably be easier and less waiting. Again, this is going in ice cream, so it doesn't have to look perfect. You don't even need it all covered in chocolate if you don't want to. And as you can see, I took it off the sheet tray because it was taking forever to cool on there because metal keeps the heat in. So I just kept moving it around on my table because I'm impatient to get it cool down. We are going to pop this in the refrigerator and let it harden completely, and then we're going to chop it into pieces to add into our gelato. See you back here in a few to churn some delicious gelato. Okay, so I have my gelato mix right here. It is going to be very, very thick. This is where you add in your half cup of cold heavy cream. This is just a 1/4 cup, so I'm going to do 2 of these. You whisk that together. And then you churn according to your ice cream maker instructions. So with only the half cup of heavy cream, this whole batch of gelato is only 18 grams of carbs. And it makes about 4 cups. So if you have a half cup serving, that's 8 portions. It's just over 2 grams of net carbs per half cup. Whisk that in. I'm going to give it a little scrape down. Make sure I got everything off the sides. And I'm going to grab my mixing bowl from the freezer. You always want to have your bowl in your freezer for a good 24 hours before you churn. Otherwise, it might not be cold enough. And I'm not plugged in, like always. At least I didn't try it first. Okay, put your spatula in. Put it down. Turn it on. Oop, see, I had some water in there. You can hear it scraping. That's not good. You want your ice cream maker to be dry before you put it in the freezer. Pour in your gelato. A spouted bowl with a handle really helps. I've made a mess doing just a regular bowl. Of course, I always make a mess in the kitchen, but this makes it a little bit less messy. Okay, we're gonna churn this. Last time it was really quick, about 20 minutes. And then when it's almost done churning, we're gonna add in our toffee chunks. So we gotta get those out of the fridge and get them chopped up real good. Okay, the gelato is almost done. So we got our toffee here. I'm gonna take it out of here. Probably could have chilled a little longer, but not too bad. And we are gonna crack it into pieces. I don't think we're gonna need all this for this little bit. Put it back on the tin foil so we can easily get it into our churner. As you can see, it's pretty much thick. Add in your chunks. They don't need to be all the same size. Like I said, you can use anything you want in here. You can just use a chocolate bar. I already put some bowls in the freezer. And give this a little scrape down. Make sure all the chunks are in there. Good. One more spin. I'm gonna grab my bowls. Super creamy and decadent. I had a feeling I was gonna have a little bit too much for that bowl, so I did grab a tinier bowl. Now this doesn't freeze solid like most gelatos, but it is still harder than my other ice cream recipes. So you do have to let it sit for a minute before you scoop it. But normal gelato, you gotta let sit for about 10 minutes. So I'm gonna pop these into the freezer and I'll be back probably tomorrow to scoop some. Okay, so here's the dealio. I shot this video over 4 separate sessions. Probably shouldn't have done this over my busiest week at work. 12-hour shifts every day, coming home and doing the video shoots. I've tried this English toffee recipe about 6 times. I've recorded it a couple of times. And to tell you the truth, the last one that I did that I folded into my gelato was not the best recipe I came up with. Down in the description box below, I'm gonna put the one that actually came out the best. They all taste good, but what you really want for English toffee is a snap to it. And these ones that I did are hard. The last one that I have in this video, it tastes delicious. It's gonna taste awesome in the gelato itself, but it wasn't like a hard cracked. The one that's in the refrigerator now from the last video isn't that hard even. So I'm gonna put this one down. The only difference, the procedure is exactly the same. You heat up the butter, the sugar to 300 degrees, but I put a tiny bit of xanthan gum into these batches and they just turned out a lot better. So I'm gonna put that down below for you guys to follow. And like I said, you can add anything you want to the gelato base. The base is delicious and it's super creamy and it melts really nice. If I were to do this again, like I do love the Heath, but the trouble it takes to make the Heath Bar, I don't think is really worth it. Like I could just buy any kind of keto chocolate bar, like the Lily's, like I said earlier, and just chop it up and throw it in there and it'd be amazing. Some nice scoops. Like I said, this is even less carbs than regular ice cream because there's only a half cup of heavy cream in this whole batch. It's looking good. Got chunks of the chocolate and English toffee in there. So there is our gelato. I gotta try it. And of course I didn't even grab myself a spoon. This will probably be better once it sits out for a bit and starts to melt a tiny bit. But I'm going to try some anyways. It's going to take a while to melt in my mouth probably. It's really cold. I definitely succeeded in making the gelato that we had at the pastry shop. This is what it was like. It has the Heath crunch in it. It's super creamy and just melts in your mouth and is luxurious. It is so good. I hope you guys try this gelato recipe at home. Even if you make little adjustments to it, it is still going to taste just as good, especially on these hot summer days. I hope you like this video. If you do, click the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe. Thanks for joining me here, and I'll be back soon with another keto dessert recipe. Bye, guys.